When it comes down to it, the idea of being a prepper and having emergency preparedness is a lot more than gear. It is about getting the right gear. We do need to think through what do we need to get, what do we need to have, what do we need to store up so that we are ready for the high potential scenarios that could happen in our area. But more so than that, becoming effective in emergency preparedness, a prepper, it's about the mindset. It's about learning how to think so that we can take whatever we see around us and tackle the particular scenario in front of us and learning how to think in that way. So today, we're going to dig into that topic by looking at the lowly safety pin. Simple, even inexpensive prep that you probably have readily available, probably got an emergency or safety kit in your house. But how can we use that? Not only what are its uses, but how can we learn to think in such a way that we can see something like that and be able to tackle the different situations around us? That's what we're going to look at in this episode. So that is coming up. All right, guys, so in this video and in this channel, we look at some different ways that you can help to hack and attack some different preps for your particular situation. And the way that we draw that out for you is by looking into subreddits and pulling out the gleaned community wisdom of a lot of other preppers so that it cuts through all the BS and brings to the surface the prepper gold to help you. And it's a clear way to find the best and trusted information quickly, right? So in this episode, we're talking about that idea of the safety pin. And if you will picture this, you could very well find yourself in a disaster scenario where you're out in the middle of the woods and you have a gash, you have a cut, and you have to deal with this situation quickly and you have to deal with it with what you have around you. And so whether that is creating a makeshift sling or brace for the arm or finding some way to bind and cover that cut, you need to know what to do, and that's where this idea of the safety pin comes in. And so in this episode, we are looking at a Reddit thread that we found to be super helpful in teeing this up. And so this is in the survival subreddit, and the question was, most ready-made survival kits you can buy, they seem to contain a number of safety pins. What's the thought behind these? In a real survival situation, would these safety pins be useful, or what would they be useful for, right? It's a good question, and I think a lot of the time people will go out and they will buy these ready-made survival kits, and sometimes people will make their own. In fact, we want to talk about that on our channel, where how can you actually build your own kit, but that's not the whole point for today. We're going to talk about the safety pin, and so the reality is oftentimes these kits will contain a lot of safety pins, and you're like, how many safety pins does a person actually need? Well, yeah, that can be true, but the idea of the safety pin actually extends far beyond just simple clothing repair. Now, yes, it can definitely include something like clothing repair, and we're going to actually let's look now over at some of the ways that we see on the Reddit threads rising to the surface that people used safety pins and continue to talk about using safety pins. And so you see a lot of different things on your screen right there. And of course, clothing repair is a big one. And so having those safety pins in your kit are going to be helpful if you get a tear in your clothing, or if you have you've got to deal with securing a sling, like I talked about. But it can also be helpful in some maybe unexpected ways. So whether that is airway management, that's pretty intense, right? So if you picture somebody being out in the middle of the wilderness and they go unconscious, their tongue is rolling back in their throat, you can grab that safety pin and even pin their tongue to their lip as a way to handle the situation. Not something I really want to try, but it has the potential for working, right? Now, also, it's the idea of a fishing hook. So if you're in a survival situation, you've got to use what's around you. And this is what I was talking about in the intro. We've got to be able to learn how to think, what do I have to be able to tackle the situation in front of me? We can take a simple safety pin and make it into a fishing hook to be able to use in a survival situation to catch food and feed our families and have that peace of mind, right? Another interesting one that's on here that rose to the surface in the threads was grommets for blankets. I think that's an interesting idea that I wouldn't have thought of, but it's helping me to even stretch in my thinking about how to use the safety pin. So imagine this if you're trying to build a tent or the weather is crazy, the wind is blowing, and you're out in the middle of the wilderness, you need to get shelter for your family, you can take that big wad of safety pins you have and create grommets around the edge of a tarp or a blanket that you have if it doesn't already have the grommets on it. And now all of a sudden you've got a way to begin to try to tie down. You can double them up so it's strong enough. Tie this down to keep it secure. So the safety pins become really helpful as a way to secure and bind, right? So some other ways that you can secure and bind, that can be shelter building like we talked about. That could be even a trigger for a trap. I thought that was an interesting one that's on here. But being able to bind a wound by securing a sling, or even if you have a pretty severe gash, you could take the safety pin and hold part of a wound together. So those are some helpful ways I think that rise to the surface here. And there's some other creative ways that we saw. We want to just pull out some anecdotal things from the threads that I think can help you to think through how to use them. And you might need to drain a blister quickly. And so you could take that safety pin. Of course, you're going to want to sterilize it. And if you're not familiar with that process, that means you need to get some fire. You could take just as easily as taking a lighter and sterilize the safety pin, take an alcohol swab after that and clean it off. That's going to ensure that just with those few seconds, that safety pin is going to be more helpful than hurtful. If you don't do that, it's much more likely that will actually get you infected, and then you're actually worse off than where you started. So make sure that you're sterilizing it. But having done that, it can be very helpful for either draining a wound, holding something together that has gotten hurt, or perhaps you've gotten a significant injury where you're losing blood and you need a tourniquet. So you need to hold it together until you can get to more help. Safety pins can be really helpful, again, in binding, where you attach that and you tie it down in such a way that it's not going to get loose, and you can ensure that you're going to be able to make it to the next opportunity for help and actually get it taken care of in a more robust kind of way, right? And so I think that's what's really helpful about safety pins, is they really help to bridge the gap. And so I told you in this intro we would talk about how can we learn how to think, right? And so more than just the gear, we've got to be able to see the item for what it is and see its function within our preps. And I think a safety pin, whether it's the clothing, whether it's the wound on your body, whatever it may be, it's there to bridge the gap. And so we've got to be able to see, hey, this item is really helpful as a way to connect until I can get to more help that can actually begin to tackle that bigger wound, or I've got a safety, or I've got a shelter situation that I can make do for now until we can get to something more stable. So I think that's helpful about the safety pin is to see it as the bridge between where we are in a survival situation, in a crisis moment, towards more stability. I think that's where the safety pin really shines, and how we can begin to think not only about what are some hacks of what I could do with a safety pin, but where it fits into our survival thinking and what we see rising to the surface in these threads. And so anyway, there you have it. There's a wealth of reasons why you don't want to throw out all of those safety pins that you may have a plethora of. You may have a bunch of them in that survival first aid kit that you bought, and you're like, why do I need these? Maybe I could throw these away. Hold on to them, because they may actually be really helpful as that bridge to get you out of the crisis situation and into something more stable. So from basic bandage fasteners, wound management, shelter provision, first aid responsiveness, it's part of your off-grid survival preparedness kit that you need to have. So hopefully that's been helpful for you, and I bet you can come up with some ways that we didn't think about to use the safety pin, or even begin to think about that idea of the bridge between crisis and more stability. And so, hey, leave in the comments some of your hot tips or suggestions for how can we use the safety pin. We'd love to hear from you. Also, leave a like on this video, and please subscribe. Those things are going to help us to get this community wisdom out there farther, so that we can all work together to be prepared. So until next time, I just want to encourage you, keep exploring, keep prepping, and embrace that survival mindset.